spectacularly. Why do women ruin everything?
This is HBR News number, why am I forgetting this? 460. Ladies, you're in the army now. And homophobic U-turns, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be. And welcome to HBR News. I hope you guys are ready for some really crazy news stories this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you're not consumed by it. I am your host, Brian, and I'm joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts, Hannah Wallen and Dr. Ranarakam. We have a great show lined up for you guys this week, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's HBR News, we're going to be discussing the new motions that apparently have recently been passed to make women register for selective service. A high-level intersectional sues a prison for oppression. U-turn signs are homophobic now, and more, so stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So I have this already on display here. You guys might know that the day before yesterday was Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to any of you fathers that are out there. Happy belated Father's Day. And regardless of what the world seems to say, you are absolutely necessary, that you are in fact essential. But The Guardian doesn't seem to think so. So we had this opinion piece from our friends over at The Guardian that I thought we would look at, written by what I assume is a man, Seamus O'Reilly. And the article is titled, "My son is suspicious of the idea of Father's Day. Why would he want to celebrate the lesser of his two parents?"
Yeah,
so
I already want to strangle him. What the hell are you thinking, asshole?
I've read this article, and it's not as bad as the headline would suggest. I've even got a rant about it, but I'm going to save it for the after show.
Save it for the after show. I haven't looked at it, but I know it was going around the Twitterverse, and people like Phil Mitchell and such have been commenting, but I haven't looked at it myself.
Has anyone else noticed the legacy media actually mentioning Father's Day? Way more than they normally would this year. They're mentioning it, and it's not in the context of shitting all over it like they usually do. They're just mentioning it, like you would if you so much as gave a shit. It's pretty obviously a tarp. Right? Why would they do this if it wasn't a tarp? Must be a war coming. Oh, what do you know? There it is.
What do you know? Yeah, that's actually a good point.
For decades, it's men are scum, children don't need fathers, destroy the family unit. Suddenly, a wild war appears. Now it's we love fathers. We've always loved fathers. And we've got meat shields to build. Give me that baby daddy. Give me all them baby daddies. Oh, what he wanted to raise the kids. Well, fuck him. He's a baby daddy now. And now he's a dead baby daddy. And now you're baby dead too because you couldn't afford to feed it. But fuck you too. Yeah, you may think you hate the media, but you don't hate the media enough.
Yeah,
but you knew that anyway. So do your best to hate the media more today
than you already do.
Add another Lego brick to your fortress of media hate. Soon we will have an army of Lego dreadnoughts.
Yes. All right. So anyway, join us in the patron show by becoming a member. Go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe to join us in the Discord, and feedthebadger.com. Just the tip to send us a message during this show. Reminds me, by the way, I should double check to make sure we didn't get any messages on just the tip. So let me open that up before we get into today's stories. And if you don't want to wake up one morning, by the way, to find that we've been yeeted from the internet, then you must go to badgerfeed.com. That is badgerfeed.com. Okay, so no new messages yet. That is cool, and I will be on the lookout for those. So let us get into the story. All right, we're going to be talking about women in the military. You're in the army now. Your mama's a big fat cow. Remember that one? You son of a bitch, you never get rich. You're in the army now. All right, so that's an old.
So,
I just thought that one just dawned on me for some reason. All right.
I haven't heard that
So-
since I was a kid.
Yes, this coming from the timesnownews.com. The House of Representatives on Friday passed the measure to automatically register men age 18 to 26 for selective service. The bill was part of a National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, which sets U.S. military and national security priorities over the next year. So we're getting ready for a draft. I don't know why, but all of a sudden this has become worthy of
Got to correct
mention.
it right now. We have been getting ready for a draft since Carter. People are not understanding this correctly. All right. The selective service registration requirement is the first step in the draft. It's not a separate thing from the draft. It's the shopping list that you make before you go to the grocery store.
Right.
It's part of the task, part of the thing. So when people say the draft hasn't been around for X long, no, that's a lie.
No.
All right?
I understand.
As long as it's been going on, as long as there's been a requirement for
To
selective
register.
service registration, we have been in the first step of the draft.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really adamant about that because I'm tired of feminists saying there's no draft, there's no draft. All right, you register.
Well, I think that there might be something worse here, but let me read this because everyone seems to be hung up on this now, including women. So recent news has reported that the National Defense Authorization Act proposes to require women to register for selective service, a move that has sparked controversy and debate. This change would amend the Military Service Act or Military Selective Service Act to include women in the registration process, making it mandatory for all individuals to register between the ages of 18 and 26. The background on this is the selective service system was established in 1917, and since then, all men between the ages of 18 and 26 have been required by law to register. However, women have not been included in this process until now. The NDAA proposal aims to make the registration process more inclusive and equitable. That's one way to put it, allowing the government to draw on the talent of a unified nation in times of national emergency. So there's been some reactions. The proposal has received mixed reactions from politicians in the public. Some, like Republican Chip Roy of Texas and Senator Mike Lee of Utah, have expressed strong opposition, with Representative Roy stating, quote, "You can go straight to hell over my dead body," end quote. Others, like Donald Trump Jr., have also voiced objections, saying that Democrats want to draft women to fight wars that nobody wants to be in. The implications of this, if the NDAA proposal becomes law, so it's right now, I think it recently passed the House. It would require women to register for selective service, making them eligible for military service in times of national emergency. This change would bring the United States in line with several other countries, including Eritrea, Israel, Mozambique, North Korea, Myanmar, Mali, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Malaysia, Peru, Norway, and Sweden. In conclusion, the proposal to require women to register for selective service is a significant development in the United States, marking a shift towards greater inclusivity and equality. This is according to another source that I was looking at. While the move has sparked controversy, it is essential to consider the potential benefits of having a more diverse and representative military force. This is all very flowery language, but one thing I do want to mention, that the story that no one seems to be talking about, and the wording might be tricky here, but I think it's worth mentioning. It says here, the House of Representatives. So women, it sounds like, are essentially, like, if this goes through, women are going to be required to register for selective service when they turn 18, the same way that men currently already are. But here's what is interesting, because if you're a man and you don't register, you could avoid it for a while, but then, like, eventually it's going to catch up to you. They're going to, you're going to get fined. You're not going to be able to vote. There's, like, other things you're not going to be able to do until you register. But it looks like what they're doing here is there is a change maybe happening to men. It says the House of Representatives on Friday passed a measure to automatically register men age 18 to 26 for selective service. So it sounds like they're automatically registering men, and they're asking, or they're essentially making it requirement for women. Do you see that? Do you see that? If that's true, do you see that there's a subtle difference there? And this kind of reminds me of what happened in Ukraine, because when Russia invaded and the war was going on, Ukraine made it to where men within the age range, I think it's up to like 45 now, which is way beyond, you know, what you would consider to be fighting age, they basically were automatically conscripted. So this isn't like, you know, registering. This is essentially saying you're going to be automatically registered. So you're not even going to have the opportunity to, I guess, break that law if the wording on this is precise, or at least sounds like what I'm thinking. So anyway, I'm not going to give my opinion on this right now. I'll let you guys have the floor and give your thoughts.
There's been a couple of things they've been doing. One of them is if you register to vote in the United States, in a lot of states, I don't know if it's every state, but I know Ohio was doing it. You are automatically registered for selective service, and in every state you can't register for FAFSA without registering for selective service. You have to show proof. You actually have to give them your draft card, or a copy of your draft card, or you can't get loans and grants and stuff for university attendance. So right now in the United States, an 18-year-old boy, a man, according to the government, but I'm sorry, when I look at 18-year-olds, I do not see men and women, especially this generation. They just do not look adult to me, and they don't act adult to me. But the government will put a gun in your hands and send you to war, and that's the way it is, right? You can't get a university education. You can't get the certification you need to be a school teacher. You can't get the certification you need to be a massage therapist. You can't get the certification you need to be an LPN, right? You can't get the certification you need for a business to consider you as a candidate for management, unless you've registered to be sent to war. And it's been that way for men for a long time, many years, decades. We had, I want to say, 5 years during the 20th century, after World War I, where that was not the case, where you didn't have to register. And that was, Nixon had initiated it, and then he resigned, and Ford put into place what Nixon decided was going to happen. And as soon as Carter got elected, he undid it. And so there were like 5 years of guys that didn't have to register. And then all of a sudden, if they were still within that time period where you have to register if you're above a certain age or under a certain age, and I can't remember what the oldest part of that is, you have like 6 years, I think, to register. Then it was too late. They didn't get penalized for that because of being outside of it. But in any case, they were stuck. They all had to go and register, and it wasn't automatic at the time. So if they didn't know the change had gone back, or if they didn't get it done quickly enough, they were screwed. All your whole rest of your life, you don't get to get an education. So if you decide, like, halfway to retirement, hey, I want to go into management in this business, but I need to have a master's degree in something to be taken seriously for this. Men who were that age, who were in that time period, they got screwed. A bunch of them got screwed out of being able to get their education. And there were some men that I knew that lost job opportunities because of that were baby boomers. So that was one thing that happened. Another thing that has happened is, we've started hearing this bullshit about women have been fighting for this, what change and everything. And I'm gonna nip that in the bud too, right? Years and years and years ago, when I think the National Coalition for Men started suing to change the system so that both sexes had to register. The National Organization for Women wrote an amicus brief stating that it's discrimination against women to not take women as seriously as men and therefore not require women to register for the draft. And that's pretty much all they've ever done, is write an amicus brief, which it's not absolutely nothing, right? But when women wanted to kill babies, right, they marched in the streets, they contacted congressmen, they did sit-ins, they did phone campaigns, they did letter campaigns, they wrote to newspapers, they got on social media when it came around, they did news shows where they went and talked about it on the news. It's been this whole major effort. They filed lawsuits and funded those lawsuits. They did everything they possibly could. They created a network of people who would do it illegally, and people who would transport them, and people who would make sure that they were protected while they were doing that, keep them from getting caught and so on, people that would help with recovery and everything. So they created a whole underground economy around this for killing babies. But they wrote a letter to the court about selective service, and that's it. That's all they've ever done. And played victim of something that doesn't harm women at all, but harms men all the time in more than one way, more than just the worst way. Right? So that's the logistic end of it, right? You look at the fairness end of it. We've been talking about this on HBR Talk for a couple of months now. The history of how conscription is connected to voting rights. And it's pretty solid. You look at the creation of the system under which we have voting rights, the parliamentary system. That goes back to the only people who were really subject to that decision, to being expected to serve in a military capacity, or to pay someone to serve in a military capacity, or pay the king to pay someone to serve in a military capacity, got mad because the king wasn't consulting them in his decisions on how to use their services, and had a war with him, right? So you have the very first action in the creation of the parliamentary system and the creation of the election system in English common law, and everything that is affected by or influenced by English common law. So every colony that became a nation later on, that all goes back to male conscription. And it's been consistent throughout history that voting rights have been tied to men's service. Even women's voting rights have been tied to men's service. Voting rights are something that men earned with blood and death, and women got them with temper tantrums. Right? Women got them by appealing to men. Give this to us. You have it. We have a right to it because you have it, without ever considering the bloody history of men obtaining it, creating it, earning it, making it available to women. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the people who are upset about this. I understand that there are a lot of people who don't think women can handle military service, but the United States military is 14% women. So apparently women can handle military service. They just have to toughen up and do it. And maybe men and women don't do identical things. That's okay. Maybe men do the things that men are the best at, and maybe the military can order women to do the things that women are the best at. And to be honest, you can find something for anybody that can move. There are things I could do, and I have disabilities that keep me from doing a lot of jobs at home. But you can bet if our country was attacked, I would be volunteering for USO at least, because there are things that even I can do. And if I can do it, some 18-year-old that just got out of school who had, 4 years of being an athlete and is fully capable should be able to do quite a bit more. Being female is not a handicap. It is not a privilege. It is something that has been treated as both for far too long. And women have been riding on men's backs for far too long. And honestly, if we do not want our government to continue exploiting male disposability and killing our sons and our brothers and our husbands, our friends and family members, our co-workers, our neighbors, by sending them places like Ukraine and Iran and Iraq and Russia, China, wherever they happen to decide that they need to go fight outside the United States over something that doesn't involve the United States having been attacked, then we have to take away the idea that it's just going to be men doing this. And the only way to do that is for women to have to register for selective service too. The minute they have to admit that when they're forcing young people to go fight wars that the country doesn't support and the country doesn't need, that some of those young people are going to be female, it'll be too politically embarrassing and they'll have to back off. They'll have to be much more careful about it. So even if people don't approve, it's necessary. Unless you approve of sacrificing men for things that don't benefit them and their families or their country, then women are going to have to step up. We are going to have to be the shield. And, I hate to say this when I'm too old to be one of the women that would be at risk, but that's just a fact. This is the only way to protect men. And women owe men that after all of the eons men have spent protecting women.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been 100 years of darkness. I'm gonna reiterate most of Hannah's excellent points there, but I'm gonna do it in the form of one of those medical leaflets you get from a walk-in clinic. I'm not a real doctor. None of this is medical advice. So it's been 100 years of darkness since women were given the vote but not the draft. 100 years of lions being led to war, rather pointed to a war by a flock of sheep who will never see combat or see any of the bloody consequences of the wars for which they vote. It's been a century of that. The first thing that happened was a bunch of wars. I'm sure that was a total coinkydink, though. Second thing that happened was a bunch more wars. The third thing hop, skip, jump, and just like that, we're always constantly at war with someone or something. We can't move for all the wars. You couldn't fit a thin fart between the ass cheeks of all these goddamn wars. And we're supposed to chalk all this up to a coincidence, I suppose. And I mean, maybe it is. Lots of things happened in the 20th century. They can't all have been caused by feminism. It's just that it did start with feminism. A preceding B doesn't prove that A caused B, but it does prove that B did not cause A. And yet so many people are out here going, why are women so unhappy? It must be because of immigration, because of pornography, because of school shooting. All these offshoots, these symptoms, whatever your pet project is. Y'all are acting like women are unhappy because of these things, when the timeline would indicate that, if anything, these things are happening because women are unhappy. And they get to ravage the world without consequence. Personally, I'd be interested to see what the next 100 years will look like if that gap is finally closed. And our fate can be decided by people with skin in the game. And only people with skin in the game. I would prefer it if nobody was drafted, but hey, maybe the only way we're going to achieve zero draft is by this accelerationist eventuality. Maybe let women walk in men's shoes, the ones that obliged to walk in as the state forces them to sacrifice their lives. Either we end up with a generation of women who finally understand personal agency and accountability, drilled into them as it is by the usual, ongoing procedures of boot camp, or that very generation of women snaps and goes, no, we're knocking out. We're terribly sorry. We were full of shit. We never wanted this. Please put us in gingham dresses and chain us to the kitchen stove for the love of God. And either way, we could begin to bring an end to this century of madness, or none of that will happen. The hypocrisy will continue as usual and as normal. Women will be drafted, but they won't get the harsh treatment that the men get, because that would be sexist. So they'll just stand around in boot camps taking selfies and pretending they're doing army stuff while they get photo ops for their Instagram. They'll just wander around filming themselves half naked for their OnlyFans and complaining about all these army men as they glance at her briefly while they march from trench to trench trying to save the countries. And our armed forces will become the same unworkable labyrinth of drain, spiraling torment that our professional environments have long since become. And we'll lose every war before it even starts, and the communists will eat us alive, and it'll be the end of civilization as you know it. Or we'll just go back to giving women the vote without the draft while we continue only drafting men. We'll go right back to the platform of the original hypocrisy and play that out to much the same conclusion as the previous scenario. There are your options, ladies and germs. Hard times create strong women, or hard times create weak women, or weak women just go ahead and create more hard times. I will make no predictions, folks. No one's played this particular leg of this particular poker game before, so I won't bother. Do it. Make your own predictions. Leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share, because sharing is caring. So.
You like that bit, don't you, Mike? You like the sharing is caring thing. I mean, I kind of like it too, but I got it from my mother, who created hard times for me as a child. Okay, I'm oversharing. I guess the only thing I wanted to say about this is, well, there's a couple things. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. There was once a story of two lawyers, and they were both fighting against the government with respects to the draft. Oh, Mike can't hear me? Hannah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear Brian.
Am I low?
Can the listeners hear Brian?
Yeah, they should be able to hear me because Mike can't hear me. He can't hear me.
Video Ninja. That's the weirdest thing.
Oh, that's the weirdest
It's weird.
thing. Yeah.
All right, maybe leave and come back. Ask him to leave and come back. Maybe it's
Mike, leave and come back and
or he muted
happens.
me somehow. I don't know. So
okay.
But yeah, leave and come back, and then I'll set you up. Okay. So there was a story of two lawyers, and they were both working on cases against the government with respect to selective service. One of them was using the hypocrisy of essentially expecting men to register as a means to remove the draft completely. And the other one, I think, wanted to include women on it. And the one that was trying to remove it completely was Mark Angelucci, who was murdered, according to the FBI, by the other. Now, of course, because it's the FBI, I don't know if I can really trust that, but that's the story as we knew it. Mark Angelucci was assassinated by Roy Den Hollander. And Roy Den Hollander also was a suspect in another shooting of a district judge, Esther Salas, and her son and husband, who I believe he did kill in New Jersey. And then he supposedly took his own life. And it's interesting because Den Hollander, when this happened, which was, God, that had to be like years ago, like around 2020 or something like that. Let me see if I can find a date, perhaps. Yeah, 2020, July 11th. Like literally around this time, a little bit later in 2020. And the media...
Just my initial reaction was, check the calendar, still 2020. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, 2020 was...
We heard one of our best mates, one of our best soldiers, had just been murdered on his doorstep, and we're like, is it 2020? Yeah, that's normal. All of that's normal now.
And when that happened, the media went into a frenzy trying to essentially use this terrible tragedy to point the finger at the whole men's movement and say, look at how crazy and unhinged they all are. They kill each other. They hate women so much that they kill other men because of their hatred. And it seems that Mark Angelucci's case was doing well, but because he was murdered and the guy who murdered him murdered himself, it just kind of fell by the wayside and we stopped talking about the draft. And now it seems to be going through, but not in the way that Mark Angelucci had hoped, which is a bit of a shame because I think that what he wanted was the whole thing to be taken out. And this brings me to like my other thought on this. I don't think that women can risk or contribute to the same degree that men do in the military. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it'll ever happen. I've spoken to many veterans, guys that like are followers of this channel, that are in units, that are in active duty right now, and they're like, they can't work with women because it changes the dynamic too much. But not only that, even if we put women in different roles that don't involve combat, they're essentially being put in a safer place and given the same amount of essentially voting power. And the thing about it that's I think that is also really unaddressed is that we're trying to find ways to equalize voting power because the draft exists. Now, ideally, it wouldn't exist at all. And more ideally, because you can't have a country if you don't have an army. You just can't. We need a military, full stop. Like, you just can't have a country without it. Look at our southern border. Look at what's happening in other parts of the world, right? But men should not be fighting for a country that hates them. So the fact that they're even talking about a draft now and that this is like passing through only tells me that they're gearing up for World War III, which I know they're doing. Like, we know that there are forces at work trying to start shit now that the Orange Man, who didn't start any wars, is not in office. And it's going to be men's blood that is spilled, and it's going to be women's votes that are going to be asked to essentially maintain that system. And until women realize that they are the ones that decide whether men or live or die, and that's if they're in the military or not, then this situation will not improve. Like, to me, and it's not, I'm not being a white knight or anything. I think that women in the military will get more men killed than if they're not. They just will. And so that's not going to work. So they can't be in the military. They can't be fighting with men. If we put them in, like, you know, positions like on computers or in hospitals or whatever, they may be in some danger. Like, you know, sometimes hospitals get bombed or whatever, but they're significantly safer than men that are actually like out there in the field. And so like those men that are out there in the field, I think their vote counts for more. And I think that they're more interested in what that vote means than a woman in a computer room somewhere, a woman making like, making ammunition in some factory, or a woman back home making babies. Like, that guy still, I think, his opinion on things should matter a lot more because he is literally putting his life on the line. And women, because they are the majority of the voter base, because they're more likely to go out and vote, they have to take that shit into consideration. Because they're either putting men in the meat grinder out there on the field, or they're putting men in the meat grinder back home, pulling on, essentially like casting their vote. And it's like they're completely separated from the reality of that. And I don't think that's going to change. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, the really tough part in regard to women and voting is men recognize that they have something to lose. And too many women don't recognize the men in their society as something to lose.
Yeah.
And that's a tragedy in and of itself. that is a 20th century development.
It is. It is, and it's a shame.
There were lots of women historically that didn't recognize that, but for it to be a society-wide issue permeating all levels of the economy, I would say we hear a lot about poverty in the United States. We hear a lot about struggle in the United States and everything. But in regard to the actual situation of the people, I can't say that women in the United States experience true poverty. Not having, looked into what it's like in other countries when poverty happens and people starve to death because there is not just a lack of resources for them, there's a lack of safety nets, so they don't have either way. Where women in the United States, we have all kinds of safety nets that are paid for by men, that are paid for with men's taxes, and that are paid for with men's physical support. Not just money, but men's actual physical labor. And it's women in the United States do not understand how much we benefit from men. And I got into arguments with women on Twitter about the whole, we don't need men, blah, blah, blah. And I tried to explain to them, if there were no men, if all the men just were sucked up by aliens into a spaceship and carted away tomorrow, the entire infrastructure that we rely on, all of our utilities, the maintenance of everything that we use, all of our modern conveniences, not just the things that make us comfortable, but the things that we rely on to not starve to death, to not freeze, to not roast in the heat, to not get attacked by animals, all of that, it's all gone. All of it is gone. Our sewer system, gone. All of our hygienic needs, gone. All of it. And yet, modern women do not understand, as a population, modern women do not understand that the male population is something to lose. Not just like women know that their sons, their relationship to their son, being able to, pat your son on the head if you can reach it. I'm not short. He's just really tall, right? But being able to pat your son on the head, even though he's an adult, being able to hug and kiss your husband, being able to call your brother on the phone, even if he's in another state, like that's not what I'm talking about. Even though those are important, women still understand, for the most part, that they will have loss if they lose somebody that's close to them, somebody they love, or somebody they rely on directly for paying half the bills in their home or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they have no clue how scary life would be without the male population.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the reason that I know this is because when you try to talk to them about it, it's like, well, the only thing that men need to protect us from is other men. Hey, bitch, don't go inside of a building.
Mm-hmm.
Don't drive your car. Oh, and by the way, don't drink your coffee. Right? Don't eat any food. Don't use your electricity. Don't heat your house with gas, because men get that too. Don't use your phone. You're relying on boys from other countries for some of the components in that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't use anything. Don't go anywhere. Don't go outside either, because the only reason you're safe outside is because you live in a community where the animals don't come in because of the circumstances created by men.
Right.
And since women don't see men as something to lose, the only other option is for women to have to confront the fact that if they vote for a politician that will send our youth to war, they might lose their lives. They might die. Right? That's it. That's the only thing that's left. because they're selfish. That's all they care about is themselves. And it's sad. It shouldn't be that way. And it shouldn't be that they're willing to sacrifice as long as they think maybe the guy that they want to protect won't be made to go, or worse, that it's worth it somehow, right? But that's just not the case. Historically, the United States almost drafted women once before. I can't remember whether it was World War I or World War II. I'm pretty sure it was World War II. Somebody told me in the last time I brought this up. But it was for being nurses during the war. And
might have been a Korean War.
No,
I don't know.
No, it was one of the world wars. It was one of the world wars.
Oh, yeah, it's probably two.
But they almost drafted women, but they got enough women enlisted, so they didn't have to, right?
Yeah.
But this is something that I'm adamant on. Yes, you might be right that if the United States drafts women and they have a military that has as many women as men, if it ends up being anywhere near 50-50, which I don't think it'll ever be, but if it does end up being anywhere near 50-50 and men start relying on women in combat roles, that's definitely not going to work. Because
they'd never do it. Like you actually just made that point, because if they made everyone register for the draft, when it comes time to pull the lever and start drafting, they're probably going to draft as many men as they can before they start drafting women. So it's even then it doesn't shake out. Like, why even have this? Like, and this whole thing, by the way, seems to be predicated on the vote, because it's like the only argument you have for drafting women is, well, women get the vote and men get the vote, but men have to like put their lives on the line and women don't. Well, I'm sorry, but like there's a problem here we have to rectify, because if like there has to be a consideration for what is the skin in the game as a man, and I think it's just really different. Now, I'm not saying that the vote has to go for women, because it'll never happen, and it's kind of a LARP in a way, but it's not something that we can just ignore, because as feminism is making women more single with fewer kids and more angry at the world and more like bitter, they're more likely even today, and I've seen this amongst supposed conservative women too, of which I don't think those exist. So, I know people are going to say in the chat, the conservatard women, but like there are no conservative women. There's just different degrees of feminist women. But they would all vote to destroy the country just out of spite, because Cat Turd trolled them on Twitter and said repeal the 19th. So because they're willing to do that, it is a self-evident problem that we can't ignore. That women are willing to essentially grab the wheel and drive off a cliff because they're mad at you. And it's like we should probably consider Thelma and Louise, yeah. Well, I was thinking more like there was like I don't remember who it was,
but women celebrated that movie and just thought
dude, I know. It's a feminist anthem. It's a feminist anthem, that movie. But anyway.
So women will self-destruct and take you with them because they're mad.
Because they're mad. So I'm gonna leave it there. We gotta move on to the next story, but I did get a super chow I need to read out. So the top G, Meredith G, gave us $5 and says, HBR News 460, I remember the young women who sued to get into the Citadel, a private military college, and it wasn't about the desire to serve and sacrifice for her country. It was about access to the boys club. Yeah, again, there's like this, I don't know. It's just women are so separated from the reality that they create, that they're living in, that they can do that. That's why there is the thing called, why isn't it in the back? That's the woman brain. But go ahead.
Yeah, you were talking about Mark Angelucci and Royden Hollander. I keep wanting to call him Hollinger because I knew people with that name, but that's not the name.
No.
Hollander was working with feminists, right? He had two women on whose behalf he was suing, and it was that same get into the boys club mentality. And he was getting shot down by a judge That's the judge whose son he killed, and he appears to have gone off the deep end mentally, and I don't think that that's unconnected. Working with feminists and going off the deep end. I mean, like, I think that there is something about the feminist mentality that is mentally ill, that is entitled, it treats being thwarted as not a reason to get good, not a reason to step back and reevaluate and find another angle and try again, but as a reason to take revenge on the people around you, or treat yourself as a victim of their actions and decisions. Hollander looked at the judge telling him that, well, you did it wrong and I can't rule in your favor because you did it wrong. Because that's basically what she said to him as, well, this is hopeless and Mr. Angelucci is going to win before you do, and therefore you're not going to get the prestige. And he went off the deep end. And, you know, that I don't know whether I think that makes him a Fed, but there's a pattern that I've noticed with people who conveniently make the news after the FBI has been involved with them and aware of them having problematic behaviors and issues, so to speak.
Yeah.
And he's on that list, where they go off the deep end, do something that everybody is like, what the fuck? Why would you even go that route in this situation? And they kill people as a result, and then the news media uses them against people who are on the wrong side of the political fence, right? Who are fighting for freedoms or who are complaining about conditions that, you know, that are wrongfully imposed on them or whatever. And this is one of those situations. I mean, it seems like there's been several stories where the FBI identifies somebody who has problematic behaviors indicative of mental instability, and instead of doing something to prevent them from going off the deep end and hurting and killing people, they push them into it and then use the situation against the political enemies of the state. There's been a pattern of that for decades.
Yeah.
You know, like going back decades, right? So I don't think that Hollander was a Fed. I don't believe in any kind of conspiracy theory that the man did this and is still alive somewhere or self-deleted because he was just such a believer in whatever political bullshit that you want to apply. But I do think that his mental health condition, which also made him susceptible to the ideas of feminism and caused him to be interested in working with feminists instead of MRAs. I think that made him vulnerable to that type of manipulation, and I think that was done to him. And,
well, he did get kicked out of AVFM by Paul Elam really early on.
Out of AVFM.
Yeah,
but he also could have gone on and continued to call himself an MRA and find other groups and everything.
For sure. Well, he was framed that way.
Yeah, he said terrible things about us, called us stupid and everything. And the real story there, in my opinion, the real story will be found when people start asking, what did the FBI do when they found out that this guy was crazy?
Yeah.
Before he committed his crime.
Right. We got to move on, but I don't, that was years ago, but it was worth pointing out because the story of Mark Angelucci's assassination by Roy Denhollander has resurfaced. It was after COVID. It was in 2020. Was it after COVID?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was July of 2020 when he was killed. So
it happened when my parents were still alive, because I had to explain to them, because it made the news and they found out that an MRA was murdered and they had questions.
Yeah.
They were worried.
Oh no, it was really terrible. Mark was a great guy, but okay, we got to move on. So let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. Thank you for the super chow, Meredith. Let us move on. So Autumn Cordeleone, also known as Jonathan C. Richardson. So like the real, I guess the dead name would be Jonathan C. Richardson. The updated name would be Autumn Cordeleone, because of course it is. Sounds like a cabaret singer. A transgender inmate serving a 55-year, well, kind of a mobster, yeah. Served a 55-year sentence for killing his 11-month-old stepdaughter, has filed a lawsuit against the Branchville Correctional Facility's chaplain. Cordeleone, who identifies as a Muslim woman, so a trans Muslim woman, alleges that the chaplain prohibited him from wearing a hijab outside his bed area, violating his 14th Amendment rights. Cordeleone argues that male Muslim inmates are allowed to wear kufis throughout the facility. Additionally, Cordeleone claims his 8th Amendment rights were violated due to harassment and ridicule from other inmates. The chaplain let me show you a picture so you guys get a bit of a context on the ridicule this person suffered. So here's an image. So anyway, I'm gonna leave that up, and you guys can.
I would struggle at first sight to figure out what that is outside the context of Warhammer. Because within the context of Warhammer, you think it could only possibly be a genetically made. That's why he Zimzer has a map of a space Hulk on Zimzer's face.
Okay. So I gotta get through this. I gotta get through this. But I'm gonna leave that up so you guys can just, and look, respect the pronouns, okay? All right. This is a Muslim woman of transness, and that has to be respected. All right. Okay. Cordeleone claims her 8th Amendment rights were violated due to harassment and ridicule from other inmates. The chaplain pointed out that Cordeleone's listed religious preference was Wiccan, to which to which Cordeleone responded that he practices a diversity of faiths. The lawsuit seeks $150,000 in damages and the right to wear the hijab throughout the prison. Previously, Cordeleone sued the Indiana Department of Corrections, of course it's Indiana, for not providing sex reassignment surgery, represented by the ACLU. So the ACLU is representing this person, okay? Indiana law prohibits using taxpayer dollars for such surgeries, which the ACLU argues is a violation of the 8th Amendment. Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita criticized the lawsuit, emphasizing that taxpayers should not fund gender transition surgeries for prison inmates who murder 11-month-old girls. Public records reveal that Richardson expressed no remorse for this crime, referring to his stepdaughter in derogatory terms, and his wife filed for divorce and a restraining order following the incident. The Indiana Department of Corrections has not commented on the pending litigation. Well, you go, Zier.
So just for the record, let's start with the most visible thing, right? That Islam prohibits tattoos. Okay, tattoos are considered a sin. They're a violation of Allah's creation. You are messing with the canvas, and this is something with Abrahamic religions. You're not supposed to mark your body. So it's kind of weird for someone with a face tattoo to claim to be Muslim. Like obviously you can convert after you've gotten a tattoo, but then you should want to get the tattoo removed.
Yeah, but I believe that's a crescent moon on the forehead right there.
Yes,
so
yes.
I think that's yeah.
The tattoo still wouldn't matter. It doesn't, like, you could, if you got.
I'm just saying maybe she's taking steps.
If you got a tattoo of a fucking crucifix on your back, Jesus would still be mad, right? If Christianity forbids tattoos, right? And the same as you could get a tattoo of the most religious aspects of Islam. You could get all of the laws tattooed across your back. it would still be a violation of do not get tattooed, right? Then you have.
But I got myself a tattoo of the Prophet Muhammad on my back. Is that not going to impress Muslims?
No.
What did I do?
Well, then you have the next obvious thing, like witchcraft is punishable by death. So that's another issue. Being Wiccan, having Wicca listed as their, that's. But the biggest problem is being trans is also punishable by death. So the individual may identify as a Muslim woman, but you get to be either or because you started out as a man. You can either be Muslim or you can identify as a woman, but you can't do both because it's not compatible.
Well, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Homosexuality is very much frowned upon on pain of death in the Muslim world. It's a bit more complicated when it comes to transgender stuff. A lot of the time when they're raping Bachabazi in basements across Afghanistan, they're justifying it by saying that these boys are not boys, they are women, because they are playing the women's role. I mean, even all the way up to Allah himself. They call him himself, but obviously he transcends such human concepts as sex, let alone gender. They don't even have a concept of gender only. We do in the West. But yeah, to call Allah gay is obviously an executable offense. An alarming amount of queers for Palestine people are getting away with it, where Lauren Southern weirdly didn't. But to call Allah trans is actually less of a violation because Allah, a bit like the Christian God, is said to transcend such things, even though we call him him. It's all very complicated. And yeah, within the weird Sharia law systems of various Islamic countries, you can actually be at least transvestical, whatever the adjective is. You can even be hired by certain authorities to harass people by turning up as a man pretending to be a woman. Like if someone hasn't paid, it's a thing that happens in Pakistan. If someone hasn't paid their taxes, the State Department can send a bunch of men dressed as women to run around the shop being obvious men dressed as women to kind of shame you into paying your taxes. And those people don't get summarily executed. Certainly not at the efficient rate at which a man who identifies as a man having sex with a man who identifies as a man. That's what's completely verboten, and I'll use that word unironically, in the Islamic world. Two men actually loving each other. Two or more men actually loving each other. It's men can pretend to be women, and that's kind of fine. Now, this is beginning to throw some shade on this whole idea that Islam's not a feminist religion. Islam's like totally the opposite of a feminist religion. Not quite. There are ways in which these things marble into each other that doesn't result in a great deal of yes or no answers. So yeah, the idea that he can be a trans Muslim woman is not as inherently self-contradictory as it sounds. Certainly not when it comes to all these countries that are trying to pander to everything the rainbow flag wants and everything the star and crescent flag wants. If you're in a country where they worship gays and they worship Muslims, then obviously in any given high security prison, you can say, I want to change my gender and I want to convert to Islam, and they'll go, yes, absolutely yes. We now worship you as a fucking totem pole, and it's all remarkably complicated, and I've probably got everything wrong.
And
what I just
well,
said.
let me put it this way: if you're in the United States and you tell Muslims here that you're trans, you might get away with it. But if you go to Saudi Arabia and you tell Muslims there that you're trans, you're going to get thrown off of a building.
I mean, at this point, they're fully aware of what's happening in the West, or a lot of them are, and they're like they understand that all this LGBTQ plus they associate that with the same thing, with exactly what they hate the West for being. And
yeah. Well,
you know,
there's more to it than that. If they decide that having gender dysphoria is not cured medically by transitioning or by living as the opposite sex, then you can't do it. Basically, they have this principle: God created everything as it is, and it goes against God. Changes to one's body are only allowed under medical circumstances. So if you're going to be sick or die because you have this medical issue, then you can treat it. But if like you wouldn't get plastic surgery to not be ugly, for instance, you wouldn't. And if you interpreted it very, very strictly, right? And the fact that, again, this is a conservative standpoint in Islam. It's not something that Western Muslims might not have the same attitude, because there is a branch of Islam that's progressive in the West. But I don't know that there is so much in theocracies, in Islamic theocracies, because they get punished basically for going against whatever the government's church is, whatever the government's branch of it is. So that strict interpretation would get you killed for saying, yeah, I'm Muslim and I'm a trans woman, or even not being Muslim and being a trans woman in Islamic theocracies probably would get you killed.
So for the record, this person was born a woman. So their taken name is Jonathan C. Richardson.
So
this is a trans man.
Oh, I see.
That's what I'm saying. This is a trans man that killed an 11-month-old stepdaughter and her wife. So this, just for the record, somebody married this person, okay? And then when this person went on to kill her daughter, because obviously she couldn't have children, and so that wasn't her kid, and she has no remorse about it. And a woman married her and is in the midst of a divorce right now.
So this is
and a restraining order.
A woman identifies as a man, but now identifies as a Muslim woman.
Oh, well, a Muslim woman, a man, no, a Muslim man, still a man. So a trans Muslim identifies as a Muslim woman. Yeah, you're right.
Cordelia identifies
so
as a Muslim woman.
switched it back up, I guess.
Yeah, so this is again, this is somebody that is mocking.
Somebody's using the religion of intersectional feminism. Like they're using it to like fucking,
the state. This was
like you activated my trap card. I'm actually a Muslim woman.
This is vexatious litigation. This is something
and the ACLU is backing her up. Like, can you imagine being a lawyer at the ACLU and you just like, do these guys just want to take on the nuttiest cases? What do you got for me? Well, here, you're gonna love this one, Shlomo. This is I'm sure they are. It's hilarious.
This is something I've been reading about little bit here and a little bit there for years too. So there's some people that when they get in prison, they just make a habit of filing whatever lawsuits they can come up with to file, and they file over and over again. And our system is set up because you do have a right to due process and you have a right to humane treatment in the prison system, but the prison system kind of gets to interpret what constitutes humane treatment. So they can exploit you as cheap labor. They can put you in a cage. They can put you in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, which is considered torture in other countries, and has been abandoned by countries that are considered less first world than we are. Right? There's all kinds of horrible shit that our prison system does to people that messes them up mentally and is absolutely wrong. But then you get prisoners that are in that system that instead of trying to weather the system, and get the hell out of there as quickly as possible, straighten their shit out, and never have to go back to it, they do this. They they look for things. What can I sue over next? What can I sue over next? What
yes, what the ACLU does.
They'll do their best to fuck with the guards. They'll do their best to fuck with the administration, and they try to make it as expensive as humanly possible to keep them there. And that's what this person is doing. And it doesn't usually work out for them in the end. They usually end up getting the worst treatment that they can get because of it. And I expect that she's going to make her life miserable doing this and the lives of everyone else around her. And then she's going to wonder what the fuck happened, why she can't get out, and but she really needs to be in a mental institution.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hannah. She looks like a totally stable and normal human being. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about that one in the comments. We got to move on to the next story, and let's go ahead and get into it. So UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has stated that he is not opposed to assisted dying in principle, contingent on appropriate safeguards being in place. This discussion comes ahead of an anticipated vote on the issue in the next parliament. Labour leader Keir Starmer, whose party leads significantly in polls, has pledged to allocate time for a Commons vote and has expressed personal support for changing the law. Sunak emphasized that the Conservative manifesto considers assisted dying, I like how they put it this way, just like Canada, a matter of conscience and will act according to Parliament's decision. Starmer, speaking with broadcaster Esther Ranson, who has stage 4 lung cancer, reiterated his commitment to addressing this issue, highlighting the urgent need for change to alleviate prolonged suffering. Assisted dying is currently illegal in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland, with severe penalties for those assisting in suicide. Severe penalties. There's another word for assisting suicide without like a government involvement. The most recent attempt to legalize it was defeated in 2015, but the matter continues to garner support from key political figures, including Shadow Health Secretary, that's what they're called, Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who advocates for careful safeguards.
A pitch black robe when they do. And speak behind a cloud of dry ice as they speak.
No. They need
with like with one hand raised and like the gnarled fingers, pointing. Okay.
So, did you read the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll finish the including Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who advocates for careful safeguards against coercion. All right, that's the end.
It's really bad. This whole time I've been struggling with closing tabs to try to get to that so I could read along with you, and I couldn't see it. But I want to point something out. Here we are, all right, in the United States. We have no right to consider assisted suicide here because our system is telling people that they can't have pain care if they are in pain and they are not dying, right? Now, in Canada, when they started this whole, assisted suicide is a good thing because it helps people who are not going to survive their illness. They're terminally ill, and the illness is only going to cause them to suffer more and more until they die. This allows them to die on their own terms, right? That's what we got told initially. But now it's being used to offer people death as an alternative to mental health treatment for depression, or death as an alternative to physical treatment that is expensive, medical care that is expensive. And that's basically killing people off because they're not worth taking care of according to the government, not because they're dying and there's nothing that can be done for them except to keep them comfortable until they die or give them the chance to die before they lose their facilities. And that's going to happen here too, right? There is no, that's just a slippery slope argument, because it already happened. Before it happened in Canada, it happened in Europe, right? So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a pattern. It's a thing that has happened in every country where assisted suicide is a thing. And in our country, we are already telling people, no, you can't have medical care for your chronic pain. No, we will not do anything to provide you with relief. Right? If you're not actively dying, you can't have pain medication, but your insurance company won't pay for anything else that treats the pain either. Right? My mom died because of this. The surgery that she went in to have, all right, she was 5'5" when I was a kid. All right, she was 4'10" when she passed away. And that's degenerative disc disease. It all was her back compressing. She couldn't stand up straight. When she would stand up, she had about probably a 15-degree bend in her back that leaned her over. And then on top of the spine being bent, she had to lean further over in order to avoid a level of pain. So when she first started down this pathway of back pain, initially her insurance company basically told her, well, yeah, you could benefit from all these different types of therapy, but they're expensive. We won't pay for those, but you can have all the drugs you want. Well, she didn't want a lot of drugs. She wanted to work. She wanted to live her life. She didn't want to be stoned out of her mind. She didn't want to have her organs trying to process a bunch of chemicals just so that she could do that. And so she paid out of pocket for what therapy she could. And she only took what medications that she had to in order to function. And she did that for years and years. And over the years, those medications became more and more restricted until pretty soon they took them all away. And so in her 70s, she went into the hospital to have extensive surgery. The doctor that treated her he straightened out her back. He put pins and rods all along her spine from in between her shoulder blades all the way down to her sacroiliac, which is down your hips, down to her hips, right? And she had to have a wound pump after that to prevent the fluids that would build up in an injury like that from building up in her body. So when she came out of surgery, like, she was in extreme pain. They didn't give her meds for 2 hours after that because they had so much red tape to get through to get them to her. That's what they are doing to people in severe pain in the United States today. And she just happened to be so desperate to fix structurally the problems that were causing her pain because they had taken away all of her pain care, everything that was helping her be able to stand up and walk at all. And so she took that risk, went into the hospital, and had that surgery during the COVID crisis. And she got sick, and she died. And that's basically assisted suicide right there. Right? We have no business in the United States considering offering people death as an alternative to medical care. We don't even offer people medical care. That has to change. We got told in 2008 and 2012 by the Obama administration that the Democrats were solving American healthcare problems by giving us universal health care, which basically was ordering us to get medical insurance. It did nothing. It solved nothing. It made things worse. In the meantime, the man who decided to take away everybody's pain care was Barack Obama. He decided that if you have cancer and you're not dying from it, that the Department of that the DEA would harass your doctor, that state attorney generals would harass your doctor and your pharmacist, and they would back up the insurance company in not wanting to pay for your care, for your pain while you were going through that. If you have a chronic pain condition that causes your joints to just deteriorate until your bones are scraping against each other. And the only thing that can fix it is surgery. Barack Obama decided that you should just deal with the pain. Right? If you are experiencing any kind of inevitable pain that comes from something that you couldn't change, Barack Obama decided that you should just deal with it. That nothing should be done to help you because it's just pain. And if you don't like it, the powers that be today are suggesting that over time, we'll just incrementally ease our way into telling you, well, okay, well, we'll help you commit suicide then. If you ever lived under the illusion that government safety nets exist because people care about you, you should lose it when you see this.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mike, I know you got thoughts on this, right?
Yeah, remembering that they are still talking to Rishi Sunak in the context of this story. Your party, Mr. Sunak, has long since already introduced a program of assisted dying. You just had the good sense to call it something else. Something I'm not allowed to specify on this platform, but by pointing that out, I've already specified it. Something safe and effective. Yeah? And then, notice B following A, then a bunch of people, the ones who didn't fully die from the safe and effective, but who did get horribly sick and diseased, unaccountably, and the NHS doctors, God bless them, just plumb can't seem to think of what could possibly be causing all of these irreversible sickness and diseases. Apparently they do have an outside inkling of an idea, but it's more than their job's worth to ever point it out. So they'll have no choice but to say, meh, we can't help you, and go ahead and bounce you over to the fuck off and die ward. Same thing Trudeau built in Canada. A human abattoir. You get one injection on the way in, one kind of injection on the way in, and you get another kind of injection on the way out. Being told all along the way, whoops-a-daisy, we're killing you slowly. Would you like us to kill you quickly instead? Oh, yes, please. Benevolent dragon overlord. Oh, merciful pestilence elemental. Thank you so very much for asking / forcing. I suppose future generations won't even have the / We are so very privileged. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that Rishi Sunak would gladly go the way of Trudeau. They all would. They're all licking their lips, waiting to stand legs akimbo in admiration of a human abattoir of their very own, thrusting their pelvis in his general direction. They get off on it. They want you dead. They're not just indifferent about your lives. They actively want you dead. They're monsters. They're demonic, unhuman, baby-eating lizard people, and I'm sick of not saying it. Fortunately,
you should say it.
I'm saying it. And fortunately, nobody gives a shit what Rishi Sunak has to say. No matter what it is he happens to say, it's too late. He's only here to herald the collapse and liquidation of the Conservative Party for decades to come, if not centuries, and to be the charcoal-broiled centerpiece of the Feast of Zero Seats. Rishi Sunak is a dead man walking a dead party walking into a dead dog park walking. So, we don't give a shit how many people you want dead, Rishi. We're not surprised and we don't care because you're already dead, Sunak. But you will live on forever as a symbol of death. You drift on the river Styx until the end of time, dreaming of receiving satellite television but never quite managing to tune in. And we will laugh We will all laugh at you from the pit of fire into which we've all been cast. And we will point and sneer as Satan lowers us into infinite torment. And it will be worth it. Narrator's voice, it wasn't worth it. But fuck it, 0 seats anyway. 0 seats.
0 seats. There you go. All right, I got a super chat from Albert Nader Retro. It just came in. I thought I would tag it really quick. For $5 Canadian, thank you, Albert. And he says, ever heard of a band called Frozen Ghost? There's a song, Should I See, makes me think of old Justin, at least as a protest song against him. No, I have not heard of this song, and I will endeavor to look into it. Thank you for the super chat. All right, so we got one story left. Let us know what you guys think about that in the comment section. This one, I thought it would go with something a little bit lighter, you know, at the end. So this is from Ground News, which I actually think is a pretty decent website because it you look up stories and it tells you, like, you know, whether it's right, center, or left-wing media that's reporting on it and how much. And
Brian,
I'm not.
Like
I wish I was. I wish I was. Yeah. Go to ground.news. No, I don't. I decided to look into it.
Whenever I see an advert for something, I'm always like, okay, I like this content creator, but I automatically hate anything that's advertised to me. And yet,
oh yeah,
so many people I like are now advertising Ground News, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to go to Ground News because you're still an ad, and I hate every ad.
Yeah, I don't like ads either, but like I thought that seems handy because sometimes you report on something and people are like, you know, they'll be like, oh, that's not the story, it's this, and then I have to like look and see, you know, like how it's being reported on the other side or whatever. Yeah, so this is helpful, but
we are hereby acknowledging Ground News' existence, and I guess that counts as an unpaid advert. But at the same time, we're saying, we don't know.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Anyway, so warning signs in the neighborhood. So as part of the celebration of Pride Month, community leaders in the area of Silver Lake, California, because of course it's California, have declared certain traffic signs to be homophobic / anti-LGBTQ. The offending signs, which read "No U-turn" and "No cruising," were deemed offensive and removed. I'm sure there's a lot of gay jokes in there that would be very funny. City officials claim that these signs, which were put in place over 25 years ago, were used to target homosexual men who would roam the streets looking to hook up. U-turning tricks, you might say. Some people have called the sign removal a waste of time, and yet another attempt to look at something in the past through the lens of modern ideology and deem it problematic. LA City Council member Hugo Soto Martinez, who helped back the campaign to remove the signs, was present and stated in a speech, quote, "For me, growing up in South Central Los Angeles, cruising had a very different meaning. It usually meant folks in their lowriders or their cars, a lot of hip hop music, just going up and down Crenshaw Boulevard. But here in Silver Lake, cruising, of course, meant something very different. It meant an opportunity for the LGBT community to try and find human connection and intimacy and to be able to express themselves in a society at the time that was not very welcoming to the LGBT community. The last two no U-turn signs remind us of that troubled past that we have here in this neighborhood." End quote. First they came for the Civil War statues, and I didn't say anything because I didn't support the South. And then they came for the U-turn signs. Joining him was Silver Lake neighborhood council member and drag queen, Maybe a Girl. As well as fellow drag queen, Pickle.
Okay.
Are we being trolled? I mean all of this. You may think you heard this story from a reputable source, who in turn thinks they heard it from a reputable source. But are we sure the original source isn't Babylon?
A troll?
This is normally the point in the story where that happens. You get a community note saying this is from a satirical website. It wasn't supposed to be believable. We're terribly sorry this keeps happening, but it does. And then we all laugh nervously as the walls between reality and satire continue to close in on us. That's
on the blaze.
Well,
you're thinking, okay, so What's a U-turn supposed to represent in gay parlance? Is it a sexual position? Does it have something to do with the U-bend of a toilet? Is it just...
No, it's like going gay and then saying, you know what, I don't like this, I'm going to be straight again. It's a U-turn.
Yeah, so the bending and then unbending is inherently funny. I wish Bender from Futurama was here, but he's fictional. So I don't yeah, so you're thinking, I don't quite understand the reference, but yeah, fine, whatever, you bend, lol. But someone goes, no, it's nothing to do with that. In essence, it's a literal road sign telling you not to turn in the direction of that seedy gay bar in the bad part of town. And that in turn is a metaphor for like, don't turn your life around by doing something impulsive.
Turn around.
Yeah,
sorry.
See that seems a bit too convoluted to be funny. And no, it's not funny. It's not funny. It's true. It's a true thing that actually happened. Wait, what? Are we absolutely sure?
This is real, bro. There's a video. There's a video.
What you have to understand is back in the day, it was illegal to actually have gay hookups here in the United States. And so there, it's sort of like how they try to prevent other things that are illegal, like youth congregating in certain areas where they know that they are then going to engage in graffiti painting or shoplifting or burglarizing or any escalation of levels of crime from there. So instead of saying you can't be an unaccompanied minor in this area, or you can't be from this apparent group of people, you can't wear this color of clothes in this area. They just say no loitering, and then they only enforce it if they think you're in a gang, right? So the no U-turn basically is it's a moving violation. And if you drive up and down Interstate 75, which is it's the road that goes it's the highway that goes from Florida up into Canada and becomes something else in Canada. It goes up through Georgia and Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and right on up into Canada. It goes up on through Michigan. But in any case, every place where you can drive in between the southbound lane and the northbound lane, where the cops can turn around or an ambulance can turn around and so on, that's not an actual exit, just a little connector between the two sides of the highway, there's a sign that says no U-turn, because that's only for emergency services and state vehicles like lawnmowers and shit to use. It's not for the regular drivers to use. You're supposed to go on down to the next exit if you want to turn around. And they make this illegal because pulling out of there, if you're not trained in riskier levels of driving, there's a whole course of training that, for instance, that people go through to operate the types of vehicles that are allowed to use that and are allowed to go over the speed limits and stuff, then you're considered to be presenting a danger to the oncoming traffic that you're turning in front of. Even if it's 2:00 in the morning and a car only goes past that area every 5 minutes, if a cop wants to ticket you for turning there, they will. And those signs kind of exist everywhere, but it sounds like, according to this story, they were specifically enforced more if the cops thought that the driver of the vehicle was a gay man looking around to see if he could find other gay men doing the same thing in hopes of finding somebody to hook up with for the night or start dating. And I can see where they might consider that a bad reminder. But if it's the sign is there, it's probably there because the pattern of traffic makes engaging in those actions as a driver
a bit risky,
dangerous to the other drivers, right? The one that'd be hard for, like, when somebody does a U-turn, right? They have turned around and it's called a U-turn because you're doing a 180. But cruising is a little different. If you're in, you could be accused of cruising if you're in a downtown area in a city and you're looking for a parking spot and there isn't one, and you're just driving around in hopes that somebody who has a parking spot, who's parked somewhere, will leave and you can take their spot, right? Or if you see somebody heading for their car and you drive back around hoping to take their spot, you could be accused of cruising for that. Or if you're looking for an address and you're having trouble finding it, you can get pulled over and ticketed for cruising if that sign is there. So I have a suspicion that there were people that just didn't like not being able to do those things that decided to use this and say, well, because this reminds us of that bad time when the overzealous government was targeting this group of people, they wanted those signs removed. It's not necessarily really about, it's not like people are going to forget that happened. And it's not necessarily about getting people to forget that happened. And in fact, people shouldn't forget that happened, right? Because it is bad when the government takes something that is supposed to apply to everybody and says, well, we're going to apply it more to these people because we don't like them, right? We don't like, even though they're not doing anything to other people, we're going to apply it more to them because we don't like what they're doing. That's bad. So those should stay up and continue to be talked about instead of being taken down, right? But that's what woke people do. They try to remove reminders of things in the past that were painful, that were part of our cultural development. We had to learn as a
well, even
society.
if they weren't alive or around for that.
Right. We had to learn as a society that that's stupid and you shouldn't do it. And they don't like that. And they want to forget that that never existed. Well, you know what? It's important that existed because it's important that we don't do it again. It's important to remember, and it's important to understand that the thing that was wrong about it isn't that the discrimination was against the wrong group of people. It was that there was discrimination. And these guys are going to, when they erase that, that will create the ability to then go on and say, well, this group of people that has victim status has the right to ask for discrimination on their behalf against other groups of people, because it's not the discrimination that's wrong. It's who's being discriminated against that matters. And you guys aren't a protected group, so you don't matter. And that's the real reason why they want to remove those signs. That or they want to be able to make U-turns and not get pulled over for cruising.
There you go.
And all of that makes perfect sense now that you've explained it in terms of signs and how they're supposed to work. But the story that the legacy media is attempting to sell us is apparently the Riddler, right? was leaving these cryptic puzzles all over town, disguised as road signs, in a nefarious attempt to de-gay everyone. Is that?
That's kind of like they're all. It's coded homophobic.
And apparently he did this in 1997. And for 27 years, those signs were not removed. So were the signs, as it happens, informationally accurate? Were they actually placed in areas with no U-turns permitted? If so, I mean, the Riddler's being extra mysterious there, isn't he?
Yes.
Placing road signs that look.
Yeah, go ahead.
Placing road signs that look and function as road signs in exactly the places you would expect to find those exact road signs in a nefarious master plan to de-gay everyone. Or were the signs inaccurate for their locations? Did they give misdirections to unsuspecting drivers, which could result in horrific traffic congestions and maybe even fatal accidents if left up for so much as one day, let alone 27 years? Because I'm pretty sure that's a crime. A full-on crime. Posting fake road signs is certainly way more illegal than posting cryptic anomalies of symbology in your nefarious odyssey in the great de-gaying of everyone. Well, I don't know, it's California.
But what if the term U-turn and cruising are actually like gay sex positions, kind of like the Dirty Sanchez or the Donkey Punch or the Cincinnati bow tie and the alligator fuck house? Like, what if it's like that kind of stuff?
You know, it's interesting. The cruising sign, right? So
the cruise into your back
cruising,
garage.
Right? You remember we used to go cruising. So for people who don't remember, fuel for your vehicle used to cost like between 70 and 90 cents a gallon. Once upon a time,
Arabian goggles.
Our parents thought that was expensive because it was even less when they were younger, except during the 70s when there was, political shenanigans going on. But in the 80s and 90s, it was really cheap. And so people would just drive around. Like, you didn't try to conserve gas because it was really cheap. And you just drive past the same area a bunch of times and wave to each other. And some people would be walking up and down the street and you wave to them. And, you might get out, park and get out and hang out with friends on a street corner and chit chat, and then get back in your car and drive around some more and go get something to eat and then drive around some more. The sign says 2 times past the same point within 6 hours is cruising. We would go 2 times past the same point, sometimes within 6 minutes.
Sure.
So they would be watching a point for hours and hours, and if somebody drives past that same point twice within 6 hours and appears to be looking around for hookup, they're busted for cruising.
I mean, it could have just been a general way to deter prostitution, and it just so happens that includes gay prostitution.
Yeah. If you work part-time and you're scheduled for a 4-hour shift somewhere, you might drive 2 times past the same point within 6 hours going to and from work.
Yeah.
But yeah,
all right.
This is what California officials are doing, while thousands of child sex slaves are cascading over the southern border like a chocolate fucking waterfall. California is busy with
it's another one. Chocolate waterfall.
Let me check my notes again. It's some road signs were discovered in the wrong place. Having been in the wrong place for 27 years, and when LA Council representatives were approached for an explanation as to why the wrong road signs have been up for 27 years, they assured us that a big boy did it and ran away. They're actually doing the meme. That's one of the oldest memes in the child's playbook, and they think they're getting away with it because they added it's a big homophobic boy did it and ran away. Oh, in that case, so stunning, so brave. So stunning and brave. You guys are totally doing your jobs properly. You're definitely not crumpling the infrastructure for 27 years because of a clerical error and then blaming it on a big gay bug-eyed alien boogeyman, are you? They wouldn't do that, would they? Yeah, they would. There's a time and a place for everything, and it's called California. 27 years of bodies piling up in the street, and they go, we've captured the incel who did this. The inflatable-looking MAGA chud with the bag on his head. Behold, he is vanquished. And then everyone's like, that's nice. Can you start cleaning away the dead bodies now?
And the needles and all that, yeah.
Yes, we can do that, but only by the power of gay. Praise the power
for the
of gay.
sake of accuracy here.
The power of gay heals all. It cleanses all. Yeah, no, please put down the power of gay. Don't point that thing at me.
Just for accuracy's sake. Although I still say the signs don't really need to be removed. It's more important to remember this than to erase it. The signs, according to I sort of went back through the links. According to the original source, the signs that read no cruising and prohibited U-turns in question, like the signs that were actually removed, were installed in 1997 when neighbors complained about gay men hanging out and looking for dates in certain residential areas close to popular gay bars. So basically, they're coming out of the gay bar. Oh shit, let's harass them. That's basically what happened.
Well, it could have been that they were creating a bit of a ruckus outside the gay bar. Because like I used to live in Boys Town, and like the weekends would get very rowdy, and there'd be drag queens fighting, pulling each other's wigs out. You know, it was every weekend. So
kind of like some of the bars I've been to, except instead of biological women, it was drag queens.
Yeah, it was drag queens and women and gay men, but mostly drag queens and lesbians. Like, you know, it was Fight Club, like on the streets, and I think that people who live there and most people who live there were other gay men. They just didn't want that. You know, it was too much of a disruption.
Yeah, there are two very basic types of bars in the world, and I'm not going to say gay and straight. There are bars where people go and hang out and get something to eat and drink, and it's all quiet.
Sure.
And they have music sometimes, and they have other times they just have the jukebox playing, you know, or they like live music, and sometimes it's a jukebox and blah blah blah. And no trouble is to be had, and the cops might even forget the bar exists, right? And the other type, people go there and they get drunk, and there are always fights, and it's always rowdy. At both bars, people might make stupid sexual decisions. You know, people might get a little too drunk and do stupid things. But at the rowdy type of bar, for whatever reason, the owner has not found a way to establish an expectation of peacefulness. And you get that kind of bullshit where people come out and they behave badly outside the bar, and it gives the bar a bad reputation. And then the next thing that happens is the people that prefer the other type of bar don't go there, and the people who aren't welcome at the other type of bar do go there, and that increases the problem. And so if it was that type of bar in that neighborhood, I can see why those signs might have been put up. Yeah. But it's also possible that it was just that type of prejudice where they're like, oh my God, we don't want to see men holding hands out here, you know, and so we're going to put up these signs, which. But 1997, I'm a little skeptical. If they said 1957, I'd be like, oh yeah, they were just harassing them for being gay.
Sure. Yeah. I think that in California in the late 90s, I think it would have to be pretty like over the top.
Yeah. Unless it was a small community. And if it was a small community, it might have been a totally different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've been in both types of bars. We left the Ohio Theater 2 one time. My friend and I left the Ohio Theater 2 one time because a girl picked up another girl and threw her past us. And we were like, okay, yeah, we don't want any part of that. We're going. Bye. You know, that was that.
So. Yeah. All right. I got a couple super chats, and then we're going to move into the after show. So Albert Nader Retro gave us $5 Canadian and says, so you know most Canucks are not voting for Justin Trudeau. He's lost the popular vote twice, I believe, just not enough are voting for the same party. Well, good luck with that, but you know, it's
lost the popular vote twice, if I remember right.
Yeah, he may win again, I'm afraid. And then Albert Nader Retro gives $2 Canadian again and says, is one-way signs anti-bisexual or non-binary? So Stefan, that's okay, very funny. All right, so we're gonna head into the patron show now, and we're gonna look at this article called, let me put it up on the screen. My son is suspicious of the idea of Father's Day. Why would he want to celebrate the lesser of his two parents? Mike says it's not as bad as it looks. We will find out. We'll go into it is The Guardian. So, you know, the bar is low is what I'm saying. The bar is low. But if you want to join us for this on the patron show, you have to become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com/subscribe. and joining us in the Discord. $5 a month is all it costs, and you'll be able to watch all the additional content. You know, you guys might as well get in the Discord server, and if you want to check out the server for free, it won't give you complete access, but you'll be able to see what the community is like and look at a lot of the rooms. Then go to badgernation.online to do that. All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming on today's show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. hit the bell for notifications, leave me a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. Links to the show notes are in the description of this video. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we'll talk to you all in the next one.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.